Thank you, Delia. And in the interest of time, have a seat. I'm going to tell you all to put on your sunglasses with all the star power on this panel. We have our moderator, Guillermo Cisneros. Will you come on up? He is the president and CEO of West Michigan Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. They're doing phenomenal things. We have Melinda Ysasi, the first Latina city commissioner of the second ward. History making, all kinds of awards these people have. Carlos Sanchez, who has been a community leader, and I believe he was once the president of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. So, I mean, it's just phenomenal. We have Christina Arnold. I didn't mention what Carlos is executive director of Casa Latina Davenport, all programs at Davenport University. We have Christina Arnold, who is the former founder and executive director of the Bob and Alecia Woodrick Center for Equity and Inclusion at GRCC. And then we have Marti Cotto Hernández, who is the president of the Puerto Rican Cultural Committee of West Michigan. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
And you can have at it.
Well, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
How is everyone doing this afternoon? Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you, Dr. Delia Fernandez, for an amazing presentation and also for this publication. I love history personally, so it's always great when I can learn about my community, where my people came from, and I believe this gives us incredible tools, to be able to speak about who we are. What is our trajectory as Latinos? The value that we have, in this community. And I just love, that piece, that history is different now. This is not the same, as it was even 20 years ago. We have a different community. We continue to grow. We continue to bring development, to bring investment, to create businesses, as Latinos. So I am very excited of this work. So thank you so much. And thank you for the incredible panelists that we have this evening. I want to start in this evening with some questions. I think it's going to be a rich conversation. So I'm going to ask the question, and you can just pitch in. Do you think that these historical survival tactics or strategies of the Latino pioneers in Grand Rapids in the last 100 years are still relevant for today in the Latino Hispanic community?
I can go ahead and start. I think watching all of this was so moving, and trying not to cry, because my family was one of 12 families that came from South Texas, Mexico, who knows exactly where, in 1947. Great-grandparents who held the masses in their homes before the Capilla was built. And then seeing some of those things now, being on city commission and being on the civil service board, and recognizing that wasn't that long ago. So yes, thank you. Also proud Grand Valley Laker, go Lakers, Dr. Fernandez. And it's great to be up here, because I went to school with Delia's brother. And so I'm like, she just was here. She's here, doing all this great stuff. And I think the one thing that I will say that strikes me as what, sort of we have to do the same, or that appears as a pattern, is this idea of mutual aid. This mutual aid society that Dr. Fernandez mentioned, this was sort of in the mid to late 1940s here in Grand Rapids. My dad would talk about, Chris's grandpa driving them around and teaching people how to drive, and so many other things that you'll read in the book. And then I think about some of the work that happened during COVID, as it related to, helping those who were undocumented, who didn't have access to the traditional sort of government benefits that were existing, like the surplus, the subsidies, or what were they called? Now I forget.
The government access to title benefits and things like that.
So all of those benefits that weren't available at that time, we saw that just during COVID present itself again, that we needed to create these mutual societies. And we see it happening even, in other smaller ways, part of our Latina network, trying to help people access jobs, connect to different pieces. The program that Carlos founded, Líderes, which is, a training program, but it also is also connected to building your social capital. And I think those folks that started that mutual society at that time didn't, they were doing it out of, this person is like me, or this person could be like me. I could need that help in the fact. So that is the one thing that strikes me as sort of repeating itself in our community.
Thank you for mentioning Líderes. Yes, one of the things that well, first of all, I used to say that I am really not, when I was at the Hispanic Chamber, I was really not prepared, or I felt uncomfortable talking about the Latino community here in West Michigan and Grand Rapids, because I wasn't born here, right? However, now I've been here for about a quarter of a century, so I have some history now. There is one thing that it was relevant those years. It's been relevant that today it is activism. It's just that there might be different ways in which we are activists, right? I've told dear friends of mine, you might not see me demonstrating on the street next to you. That is not how I do activism. But I will be talking to other folks. I will be in different venues. I will be talking to different people, right? So as long as we all keep working towards the same goal in unison, in communication, that part of that activity or that way of moving forward, it continues to be relevant.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And I know Mindy mentioned it was hard not to get emotional with, when you think about the history. So my grandparents were actually one of the first families to settle in the area. So I grew up watching them, helping people, people lining up outside their door. My grandfather would translate and take them to get their driver's license, including Maggie from Maggie's Kitchen. He took her. And so a lot of the history that I hear from individuals that, I don't, some of it I don't remember being young, but being younger. But I think that it's definitely relevant today, is that need for support and help and activism, because back then there weren't that many of us in the community, where now there's so, I don't even know what the population is at, 16% here?
16%.
Yeah, so that's huge, that's significant, but the opportunities aren't there for many of us, nor are we reflected based on our demographics and leadership roles and so forth. And the need for the support for undocumented individuals wasn't as relevant back then as it is now. So the support services and so forth are so important. And I do want to mention the Latina Network, how significant that's been, because when I was growing up, I was one of a few, where now it's like there's so many of us that are there and that are professionals that have gone on to college and so forth. And now, we can support each other. We can, we can mentor each other and help each other, and just how important that is for individuals to have the role models and support to, and networks to be able to continue on their leadership journeys. So definitely, I think that the support services are so much needed.
Hello. I'm a transplant. I'm from Defiance, Ohio, and I came to Grand Rapids since '72 as a teenager, and I stayed here. And there were hardly a lot of Puerto Ricans and hardly a lot of Mexicans at that time. I have seen the population extremely grow in the past 50 years that I've been here, to the point that I know the services that were offered there. we have grown as a Hispanic community, but I still think that we're still in the same plot with services that need to be happening for the Hispanic community. I come from the field of education, and I remember when there was a lot more Hispanic teachers and administrators in the district, and now I see less. And so that we are struggling if we want to educate our kids and get them where they need to be. I think that we need to look at the services that are being offered for the parents in health, a lot in health, but in just social services. And I just see that there's a need and there's some relevance. And I also see this, I come from Defiance, Ohio, so I'm an Ohio person. But I still have a family that has graduated from state and the U of M. So I just want to express that I really think that we just need to be out there and try to know who we are in the community and what services are needed.
And thank you. And I want to really add the value, that we all, bring, to this community. Our different Latino organizations that were mentioned, Líderes, Latina Network, the West Michigan Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Here it's my friend and the board member, Tony Baker. He's a PhD. A few years ago, he sent me 2 articles about the West Michigan Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. So in 1981, and these are in the archives of the Grand Rapids Public Library. In 1981, Don Francisco Vega, which was the owner of the cemetery, said, well, Latinos are growing here in West Michigan, in Grand Rapids. We need to create a Hispanic chamber that represents us as Latinos because our voices are not being heard. There was a big splash, it was in the news, 1981. After the splash, nothing happened. In 1992, 11 years after, another group of Latinos workers for the city of Grand Rapids were very upset because the Grand Rapids Chamber at that time was bringing the World Trade Center. Or the World Trade Center was coming to the city. Non-Latinos were invited, to those, meetings. And they said, we need a Hispanic chamber that represents us and brings our voices, because we are not being heard, we are not even being invited. They started another Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, didn't work out. 10 years after, another group of Latinos back in 2003 said, and these were 3 Latino business owners right on Division and Burton, where the West Michigan Hispanic Chamber of Commerce is currently, said, we need a Hispanic organization that represents the voices of the Latino business community. Fine, and the chamber that I have the honor to lead was incorporated in 2004, and has the goal to increase the economic advancement of Latino-owned businesses and support the professional growth of Latinos. It took us, so today is 2023. How many years are there from 1981 to 2023? It took us 42 years as Latinos to get to where we are at and to have a voice that represents us in the business, sphere. So this takes time, but we need to make sure that we continue to organize ourselves, and continue to represent well and recognize that all of us should have a voice in this community. So, and I get passionate about these pieces. So I'm going to continue to ask the questions here. So, given the Latino Hispanic community is so diverse, with Mexican, Puerto Rican, Dominican, Spanish, and other geo groups, how do those differences play out today, both positive and negative?
Well, I'm just going to speak from the educational point of view, because as an administrator in the school, you see the families that are enrolling into the system. And the Mexicans have always been here, and the Puerto Rican community was growing at the same time, with families coming in to work in Grand Rapids. Then there was a growing population of Dominicans that were coming in the 70s that I remember very, very clearly, because some of our educators, I don't know if you Mr. Peña, Ms. Moreta, we had those people that were Dominicans that coming back from that background, and we didn't have a lot of Puerto Ricans. I think that more of us were in the teacher aide position. But the people that were coming in to the school, I can tell where the population was growing, and lately it has been the Guatemalan community. Guatemalan community is growing very strong, and they need a voice in this community too. So I just think that one of the things that it needs to play out here is that we still don't even know amongst ourselves, and especially when non-whites, what is, don't know the difference between a Mexican, a Puerto Rican, and a Dominican. Like I went to the bank and some guy said, well, I don't understand what's the difference between a Mexican and a Puerto Rican. I said, there is a difference. Our food is different. We speak a different accent with a different accent. And he says, well, what food do you eat? You know, he didn't even know. And I said, well, this is you talk about enchiladas, burritos, and you talk about tacos. And Caribbean people eat rice and beans. Rice and beans. If you go wherever you go to Dominican, Puerto Rico, hasta los cubanos, that we say, we all eat a variety of the same food. And we're not all Mexican. There is a culture in this country, especially in this city, has grown with different populations. And we are not even conscious of that yet. So I think that's a negative, that we need to be more inclusive with ourselves and our activities and make sure that we all have a voice. Okay, and a voice for me is a vote. If you can vote, you have a voice.
I'll just say, having, been born and raised here, and, lived here my whole life and have seen, the population grown. On the negative side, just kind of going with what Marty had said, is that we're all put into one category, like, oh, you're all Hispanic, and it's like, no, we may be all Hispanic, but we're not all the same. So I think that a lot of what you said, Marty, is so true, is that just, categorizing us all as the same when there's so much richness with all the other cultures. So I think, on the positive side, it's just amazing to have all the rich cultures, and I've learned so much being part of the Latina network, because we are predominantly the Mexican population is the highest population, but just learning about, the Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, all of the, the richness of the other individuals as well. So I think that that's a real positive, but a lot of people don't understand their stories, within all of us. And so not all Mexicans are the same. We don't all, when I was growing up in a time, and Marty can probably relate to this, it was like, speak English. My mom had to go to the schools and fight because they wanted to put us in special ed back then, because we were Mexican. And so, I'm not bilingual. And so I've been told before, like, you should be ashamed, you don't speak Spanish, that kind of thing. But that's how I grew up, where now it's cool to know language, and it's a different time. So, generational as well, we're all different. I'm second generation here, and, again, we were one of 2 Mexican families in our school when I was growing up, so I had to assimilate, so there's a lot of, where now I'm very proud of my culture and heritage, where when I was growing up, there weren't that many people that looked like me, so it was really challenging to kind of, who are you? And I know you mentioned being asked. I grew up in a time where it was, where are you from, or what are you? Are you Polynesian? Are you this or that? I used to get that in school all the time, So and I still have gotten it, even, recently, like, well, where are you from? But where are you really from? So it's like, hey, I was born and raised here. And a lot of people don't believe that I was born here. So I was born in Butterworth Hospital.
May I add, I think there are also, people don't understand, Puerto Ricans did migrate north like ¿cómo se dice? Delia. Delia said, my father came up from Puerto Rico to work in the foundries in Ohio. That's how we came here. And then we worked, my mother and the 5 of us kids out of the 8, migrated or do immigrant work and pick tomatoes. And we went up and lived for every 3 summers up in Traverse City, Lake Leland, out picking cherries. Did that. So when I came home back from school, they would ask, so what did you do for your summer vacation? Big cherries, But everybody has a story, and a beautiful story that needs to be told of how we came to be. All these ladies, I don't know you, but Delia, I know from the Fernandezes, and Ysasi, I went to, worked as a teacher with her dad, and she babysat my kids, So we have a history here, and a beautiful history. And I think that's a positive, because we all came together. But I think it all came through education.
I'll just say two things about the diversity. Of course, there's enormous diversity within the Latino culture, right? Of course. So when I find myself in places where we start talking about the differences between us, I say, yeah, that's fine, we're different, but let's rather talk about the similarities, right? And how can we work together? So that is one. The second piece is that last time I heard, I think it was about 80% of the Latino population in West Michigan was of Mexican descent.
87.
87. So sometimes what happens is that any Latino, Hispanic fill in the blank becomes a Mexican fill in the blank, like event, talk, whatever. So if that is the case, I think it's an opportunity, it's a responsibility, let's say, for myself to make sure that as much as possible, it is, I mean, if it's not an actual Mexican thing, to make it as diverse as possible, right? And I will be the first one to say, I don't know that many Puerto Ricans or Dominicans, etc., but I know one. Can you introduce me to more, right? Or because again, so you utilize our network to make it actually a diverse, feeling like event, party, whatever. So.
I'll just add, I think, yes, all of those pieces. Yeah, Marti's daughter used to walk me to school and get me a donut at Old Elder Elementary. And so there is this deep, deep history. We have been part of these communities. You saw that call. I went to school with Pablo Martinez's son at Catholic Central. I think it would just keep hitting that it's not so far removed from this. But I think the positive is yes. Fried plantains, love them. Why don't we have those as Mexicans? That's one thing I would say. When we talk about culture, that very top point is the food, flags, and fun. Now that's great, and that's usually how you get people in. The deeper part is, what is the collective power that we're willing to build together? And I think that's where many of us, as we're maybe sharing a drink or sharing a taco, or we were eating some menudo this morning, that's the real question for us. We have this, I think, care and consideration. There's been marriages, there's been working together. But in Delia's book, it's really great to be a footnote to say that only in 2019 was I elected as the first Latino identity to the city commission. In 2013, Sunita Lanier was elected as the first Black woman. And so when we think about these racial identities, Black, Latina, my nieces and nephews are growing up as multiracial children, Black, white, and Latino. And I want them to know all of their parts of their communities and heritages. And so I think that's what's missing for me is, yes, it is great to be the first, but who's going to be the fifth? Who's going to be the 10th? Who's going to be the 15th? And how will we take that not only to the city level, but to the state legislature. We don't see that here on this side of the state. We just added we now have 5 positions on state legislature here in Grand Rapids that needs to be changed. We went through redistricting. So I think what, Marty said around that representation is the vote is we have this huge opportunity to continue to grow our political power. And we also need to recognize that not all Latinos, sort of believe the same things from a political perspective. But I always say that, Latinos want the same things that anybody else who is non-Latino in this community, in this building want. We want safe schools. We want the ability to buy a home. We want the ability to get education at an affordable rate. We want our children to do better than we have done. What the difference is that there's different structural barriers that we need to be aware of, and how do we address that either for a language piece, systemic racism piece, and some of those other, colonial aspects that Dr. Fernandez brought up.
Yeah, thank you. I really like what Carlos, said, when he started the piece, when we hear or I'm part of conversations that, we are different. Well, let's not focus on the differences. We are all the same, and at the West Michigan Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, we have a program. We work with Latino college students called Building Bridges through Education. I just don't perceive this, very prevalent in the new generations. These new generations of Latinos, they don't care if they are Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, they are completely integrated, So it is fascinating that this happened, with the previous generations, but now, I seriously feel that we are more in tune with our, really Latinidad, and we don't pay much attention to the pieces, of which country you are part of. At the Hispanic Chamber, at some point we had 3 Dominicans, 3 Mexicans, now we have 1 Venezuelan, so it is beautiful to see all of the ethnicities, not ethnicities, but the different countries that we have in this region. So we have lots of opportunities to continue to come together as Latinos, and we're getting there more and more.
Can I just say, we do have a lot of opportunity, but as a city and community, we have to be more inclusive with opportunities because we're losing so many of our young people. Mm-hmm. I mean, just my daughter went on for her bachelor's and, her master's, which would have been a dream for my grandparents to see, that she went to U of M and then to Columbia. She's in New York now. She has no desire to come back to Grand Rapids. She lives in Brooklyn. Her neighborhood is primarily Dominican, and it's, like you said, it doesn't matter who you are. It's just the richness of having that community. And that's what I see so many of our young people leaving, or we can attract young professionals, but we can't retain them. And so that to me is just very disheartening because we still are very much a community that is not inclusive and representative of all. So.
And Christina, this is a problem that we have as a state. As the state of Michigan is losing population as we speak, and this is something that our current government is trying to figure out, on how to not just attract but retain people, and in my opinion, it's about investing, in the community that we have here. We don't have a pipeline to produce Latino engineers or Latino doctors currently because our kids at GRPS have never been invested in physics and math. Our Latinos right now, when they get to middle school, they are not interested because they are weak in STEM, physics, and math. And this is a conversation that many of us are having, we need investment in our Latino community, in our Black community, so we can have we can create different pipelines and they stay here in West Michigan. Obviously, we're creating all kinds of, pipelines, or we want to create pipelines. We have the medical mile right now, many pieces. But how are we paying attention? Attraction, it's awesome. We need to attract others. But how are we paying attention to our local communities? How are we investing in them? So I completely agree with you, 100%. We have an issue with retaining people, and it's in my opinion, it's about development of what we currently have, in this region that has never been paid attention.
Yeah, but I also do want to say though, that we've been talking about that for years, and I always say that there's a warehouse full of flip chart paper that, okay, we're bringing in consultants, we're doing this, we're doing that, but we're not really doing it. So, yeah, I have seen some movement, but again, not to reflect the demographics of our community. So, and it's more than just educating them, because a lot of our young people are being educated, but then they're going off to other places because they don't feel a real sense of community here in our community. So that is really
Yes. Yeah. I was about to leave, Christina.
What?
I was about to leave West Michigan after 3 years of being here, not finding my community, my opportunities.
So if we want to be this rich, vibrant community, we have to be inclusive for all people and have the opportunities for all people.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of our Black and brown people, it's hard to be what you can't see. Yes, now we have, I want to say Mindy, you're always going to be Mindy to me. Mindy, at the City Commission, we have our attorneys like Raquel, we have all these amazing, leaders, but it's like, now the next generations can see see the potential and opportunity.
Absolutely. So what is the biggest misconception about the Latino Hispanic community by other population groups in Grand Rapids?
I think some of it was said, so I'll just restate this really briefly, because I'm trying to look at Mary Beth to be like, getting the head nod, because I want to get my book.
Yes.
Is one of the whole reasons that we started the Latina Network back almost 10 years ago now, is because there were some of us, and I'm sure there were other pockets of individuals who were, but it was myself and two other friends, or three other friends, who felt like we kept being asked to serve on boards. We need a Latina, we need, essentially felt like checking the box. And we were like so exhausted by that ask that we cannot be the only ones. And if we are the only ones, we need to be, or we know we're not the only ones, so how do we connect? And so Latina Network was created to shape a different narrative of what it means to be Latina. A recognition, again, that we are not all Mexican, we all don't speak Spanish, that we all, I'm child-free by choice, so, sometimes there's a lot of maternal identity put into that Latina identity, that we all work in different areas and that we sort of want to be able to foster that. Again, I grew up with a family rich in education. It looked like a really hard job. Never wanted to be a teacher, had to clean books in the summers, didn't do as much research, like the business classes. And so this realization that we are not a monolith is just like the number one thing that I think all of us have said. I think the other misconception I would say is that Latinos have just arrived here in the city, right? I think that is a very common misconception for some people. But if you look at Dr. Fernandez's research, you will see that the history is so deep. And there were so many firsts, and that, I think when I read the book, some of the clippings I think came from my grandma, but also reading the book about this whole statewide, what is the presence of Latinos in the state? So I would say those are the two, that we're a monolith, we're all the same, and that we've just arrived in this community and don't have such a long history of being here in this Midwest city.
I'll say that. I mean, I cannot overstress anymore the fact that we are not a monolith. What I would actually say, though, is that we need to be careful ourselves in our Latino community when groups play to that monolithic, right? So somebody would say, but Latinos are really, really religious. So there's a reason why they want us to, right? No, I am not, right? But they really care about family and kids. Well, some of us don't have kids, right? I mean, there's always a group that tries to play to that idea of we're all the same. So we gotta be attent. Why is that? There's a reason why they want to put us like everybody on the same, all of us in the same box, right? Whatever that box is, again, it's always because someone has other intentions.
But every culture nationality has their celebrations and pride that they share. And so for the Puerto Ricans, we need to be included in things that are happening in the city because we are U.S. citizens, and we're entitled to those kinds of services. And I just think that when we don't acknowledge other cultures within the heritage of this growing city, that we're neglecting them. The Dominicans have been here since the 1970s, and I remember one time when they were celebrating, I used to go to their celebrations of February 27 was their Independence Day. Big event. But the population started dying out and those things were not celebrated. When you don't celebrate your culture, you lose it. Your kids lose it. They forget how to speak Spanish. They forget, can't cook the meals anymore. I think that's what's important here is that we don't forget and we celebrate and it's, I think it's the thing that we need to be doing as a city.
Absolutely. Do we have time for one last question?
Yeah, one last question.
Okay, perfect. With the significant population growth and demographic changes, how do you see the Latino Hispanic population becoming more impactful in the local public policy arena?
It doesn't happen just because, right? I mean, when I was in Hispanic Chamber, people say there are a lot of Latinos. So eventually, Latinos will become this and will have the power, as if it was just a natural progression. It doesn't happen that way, right? It happens because we actually do it. Because people like Mindy run for office, right? It's because you go to the state and you talk to the governor, right? It's because you educate our kids. Right? It doesn't just happen. So we actually need to, every single day, we got to get up and do it and work at it. And I can also, I would like to underscore, it happens because of books like yours, right? You're absolutely right what you said. The history of the Latino community will not be the same anymore, right? Because there's one book. Like, when you think of it, like, God, there's only one? Yeah, there is only one. Like, we got it right more so.
I think we just have to work on collaborating more and supporting each other when we have the opportunities to run for public office and different things. I mean, again, we don't all believe the same, but as much as we can support and advocate for each other, that means a lot, and that we can come together and what we want and what we want to see for our future is the collaboration is really important, and agree to disagree, but let's support each other. That's the only way we're going to see some change and not be so territorial about certain things or that certain groups own this or that's them, and we have to come together.
I really think it starts with education, starting young, teaching them. The schools need to know that we need to have minority teachers in the classroom. I never had a minority teacher in my whole 12 years of education. And that was important when I was in Ohio. But it's important to have those people of color involved in the education of the students so that they can grow up and be productive citizens.
I'll just say, public policy, I think is, we saw it in the presentation. Pablo Martinez, I know I'm forgetting the other gentleman's name.
James Raxdell.
James. And they fought something that seems like a huge institution that at that time, that I think today people would be afraid to do. And so that was, in the mid-70s. And so that's how policy changes. I see our Deputy Chief Freeman here in the audience. You got your uniform on, so I got to call you out. We've had a lot of those first. But I also think the other piece of public policy is to continue to disaggregate information that we see, particularly around areas around housing, which we know, pretty much almost all the country is in a significant housing crisis. So when we look at, again, we saw that during COVID, where we knew more Latinos had more individuals in households due to a variety of the racial income gap, due to just overall, not a lot of transfer of wealth. And so that's why we saw those higher rates of, COVID in the Latino and Black populations. And so I think we have to continue to disaggregate that data. We have to keep asking ourselves, how do we build up political power? So some of that through gerrymandering that hopefully is maybe getting taken care of here in the state of Michigan. And then, lastly is to remember that public policy isn't just for those who like politics or for those who want to come to hear a wonderful speaker on a Sunday afternoon. It is impacting every single one of us every single day. The minute we wake up, when we get in our car, are we able to drive? Can we purchase that home? Can we get into a bank? And just don't talk about it as something that doesn't impact us, but make it, sort of that real life scenario that impacts us all.
Outstanding. Thank you all so much. I will, in the interest of time, allow for 2 public audience questions if you have. Dr. Fernandez or the panelists, and then we'll close it out with final remarks.
Yes,
from you.
yeah.
Do we have 2 questions, 1 or 2 questions? Does anybody have?
Oh, this story.
Deputy Chief and Dr. Jones.
This is less a question than a statement. The slide that you had where the women were in the back of the men was a powerful one. So I'm very appreciative of seeing the Latinas here standing up front. I understand the benefit of having strong African-American women in the family, in the congregation, in the community. And to see you up here on part of this panel, I love the makeup of it. So I really appreciate you all being here and taking that front role.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, Dr. Fernandez-Jones, but the one question I do have, and it seems that it was omitted, is that we still have a crisis of immigration, as the Braceros Act was as controversial then, but we are now don't even have that kind of policy going on, and the kind of changing dynamics of by the Mexican City when it was small, now large. So could you just, Dr. Fernandez, could you just give us some observations about the crisis on the Tejano border? And
Yeah.
since that's the longest border,
Yeah, and I think there is this, I'd like to connect it to Michigan too, because I think that we play a very interesting role in the aftermath of the Trump administration's policies, and with many of these policies have not been rolled back. And so we're living with these, the separation policies. We are seeing the direct results of that here in Michigan. I know many of you hopefully have seen the article that was out a couple of months ago about many of the Central American youth who are working in our factories, right? Mm-hmm. And that this was an educator who blew the whistle on this, right? That shows us this importance. We were not alone, of course, right? That there were these other cities that were being called out for this, but that we were included in this tells us even more, right, about the policies, the ramifications of these policies, that we have not come to a place where undocumented immigrants, children, their families can find safety, right, in our city, that they are prone to exploitation from the systems that of capitalism that require that their caretakers needed them to contribute, that allowed for those children to work in those particular facilities. And so I think that in as many of the panelists have said, that we actually still have a very long way to go in considering how we bring into the fold the most marginalized within the Latino community.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to close out on that just in the interest of time, because those of you who haven't been able to purchase Dr. Fernandez's book, they are out there. We want to give time for that. We thank all of you all. it's a sacrifice given your busy schedules to come. And we do appreciate the discussion. We absolutely appreciate the
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
that you've done. And let's give everybody a good applause.